I think today, Women's Equality Day, is about all of us and our role, in a sense, not just the past and the present, but also what we are moving forward, not only for us, but for all women, not because men are not there, but because the role of women and our voice is critical to these times, never more so than in the past. And in fact, it seems to be a continual kind of challenge. But also our girls, our young women, and our young men. But I love what Elizabeth Cady Stanton said. She said, we don't want our girls to be adjectives, we want them to be nouns. Think about that. We are not describing, we are part of the action. Because if we don't have a good, balanced society, we will not survive. And that is, you see that in other countries, and we have to remember that. It's not about giving one more than the other. It is about giving a balance and giving so that we can all be able to make the kind of country that we would like to be. The issues that we have in front of us, the systemic and pandemic issue of violence against women. It is out there, and how can you solve that, whether by legislation, community action, there is a whole array of it, but you must address it because that is considered one of the biggest drains on us succeeding is by the violence that women and girls and families endure. We have the issue not only of that, but of trafficking. Trafficking is a universal. I live in Oakland, Alameda County. We're considered, by the way, one of the leaders in terms of a trafficking central. Who would think? You would not think of it, but it's kind of a portal where people are shipping through. Young women, all different ones. People like to say, well, trafficking is about those people. We are those people. It is all of us that are being that.
You were born with potential. You were born with goodness and trust. You were born with ideals and dreams. You were born with greatness. You were born with wings. You are not meant for crawling, so don't. You have wings, learn to use them, and fly. What it means is promoting the quality of life in a community through both political and non-political processes. That's like, how easy is that, right? It's not, because a lot of people are not civically engaged. Just the fact that you're here, I'm going to take a leap of faith and assume that you are all civically engaged. But I think it's so important that you own that, that you own that civic engagement. And that is why I number my pages. So I think it's so important that you really do own that civic engagement. So civic engagement shows up many ways. A, volunteering with the organization, that's a way of being civically engaged. Voting, of course, as we've already said, is a way of being civically engaged. Being involved in nonprofits. Maybe you're involved in a nonprofit that's fighting human trafficking. That's a way of being civically engaged. And then, of course, we have the political ways of being civically engaged, whether it's writing a letter to your Congress member, your local school board person. That's it. Some people want to be a little bit more passive, so they just have a big button on that says, I support women's rights. Well, you know what? They're being civically engaged by that, and we should respect them that that's the way that they're doing it. I think it's so important that we find what is the way you want to be civically engaged. What's a comfortable way for you to do it? And then what's that one thing you can do to push yourself just a little bit beyond your comfort level? Because flying isn't easy. But once you're soaring, right? You've got the wind with you. So think about what it is for you. Something happened that I think awakened a lot of people about the need to be engaged civically, though they might not have all called it that. And, we can have a lot of discussion about our feelings about the election of 2016. I'm not going to do that now, but I think you'll probably figure out where I stand on that election. But one thing that election did is it woke a lot of people up. And it woke up some people, not for reasons I particularly wanted them to wake up, but it woke up a lot of people. And, we have more people engaged. or at least saying they're going to be engaged. And frankly, I think these midterm elections, we're going to actually see who was serious and who wasn't, because I know even in the primaries, we did not have the voter turnout that we wanted, on both sides a little bit. So it's going to show. But with that said, people are more engaged than ever. I mean, people are marching. People are starting organizations, on all sides. Nonprofits that are involved in some of the issues that we're hearing about, they're making more money than ever. The NRA has huge amounts of donations coming into it, as does the ACLU and Planned Parenthood. So people are awake. Now, I want to really make sure that you do fly. And so I want to talk just a little bit more about advocacy. So our voice, and you said it so perfectly, when one, there's change, but when there's many, there's transformation. So first, I don't want anyone in this room to underestimate the power of their one voice, because one voice is important. But when you can amplify that voice and have many more voices with you, it makes a different kind of impact. So I want to talk to all of you just a little bit about how you do that and about how you create your network. So when you are advocating and wanting to make change, you're ready. So first, you belong to ICW. You already have a network. All these people in this room, maybe some of you are guests, all these people in your room can be part of your network. Always build your network. Always think about building your base. Always think about the people you know who believe in what you believe, and write their names down. We have this thing called technology, and get that constant contact going, and make sure you are keeping track of the people that you know who believe in what you believe, because they are the people that you can call out. And now, to be honest, advocacy is still hard, but it's a lot easier than it was 10 years ago. It's a lot easier than it was when those women were traipsing up and down in covered wagons trying to get the vote. Social media, it does have its benefits. And so think about that, because each of you is a leader. Start to own that leadership. We all have this idea of what leaders are, and everybody's a leader. By making a decision in your head, you are a leader.
I believe that we all have a path, and we have events in our lives lead us to where we are today, why we're here today, for example. I was born in Iran, as you know, and I had to leave Iran when I was 13 with my mom. Moved to immigrate to the U.S. and leave my dad behind, and start a really new chapter, a new life here in the U.S. Moved to the East Coast initially and went through high school in a town that was a very small town. So it was a major change in life. And we noticed an overnight change in our country, in Iran, where we were raised. I think Iran at that time was known as Paris of the Middle East. It was very progressive. We grew up wearing mini skirts, and and people went to the beach in bikinis and all that. And suddenly, overnight, you had laws that restricted women's rights and freedom of expression, no music allowed, no singing. Women were not allowed to voice their opinions. You had to wear the veil and no makeup. So it was a huge change. And of course, that caused so women's rights and women's issues were naturally part of our daily discussion as we moved into our new life, and politics and news were part of our lives. So I think that was an important, just a personal background that puts us here as far as the women's issues. And I chose to go to law school to help people who may not have a voice of their own, to fight for justice and equality and all of that. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to to do that. So that's one of the things I want to say is that the fact that we moved to the U.S. was we had the ideals of what the United States stands for, which is freedom of expression, equality of women's rights, and so on. So striving to keep that going.
So my family, I have to start with my family. My middle name is Lee, and in my religious tradition, which is an immigrant religious tradition, you name people after folks in your family that you want to honor. And I'm named after, my middle name is named after my great-grandfather, Lee Wolf. When Lee was 3 years old, his family fled the shtetls of Russia, and Lee, being small, never did get that tall, was hidden under a hay wagon to escape the, not burning shtetl at this point, but the depredations of the people who were storming through the villages at that point, killing Jews. And Lee made it to this country. A very similar story, I'm noticing, in terms of fleeing religious persecution of various sorts, and raised a family. So, as you probably know, most stories of strong women start with stories of strong mothers and grandmothers. And I loved the story of the Tennessee delegate with the 19th Amendment getting the what for from his grandmother, because that sounds very familiar. And when I was small, my mother made sure that our understanding of who we were in this culture was not to take for granted our rights, our belief systems, but to defend that, to be sensitive to that, to defend everybody's belief systems, everybody's right to worship and to speak as they chose. So what you get out of that is a 5-year-old Jennifer in kindergarten refusing to say the entire Pledge of Allegiance, because they added during the McCarthy communist witch hunts of the 1950s the phrase "under God" as a way of differentiating in theory, between communists who didn't believe in God and God-fearing Americans, which is a false dichotomy. And little Jennifer was very offended by this, because not everyone believed in God, not everyone believed the same God, and it wasn't fair. So a 45-year protest began, and to this day, I still won't say it. I'm feeling a lot. I don't feel like calling Copernic, but I feel him. That's all I can say. So my organizing experience started in civil society. The Bay Area has a remarkably developed civil society dialogue, and it's the only thing that's going to save them, because land use, you hear the people talk about land use, how can that be an activism? It is in the Bay Area. It is in the Bay Area. So it's essential that the dialogue be pursued, and I've dedicated my life to trying to make sure those dialogues happen. Leadership Mountain View is a great example, and I loved working with people who were telling people how to engage in their local community. You have a voice. If you want the pothole fixed on your street, you call the city, and teaching them how to be empowered citizens. It's something I believe in very strongly. And my work in politics, which came later in life, is a natural outgrowth, to my mind, of helping people have their voice. The organization for which I work now, Swing Left, is an overtly partisan organization, so I won't go too much into why we do the things we do. But what we do is to be certain that everyone gets out to vote this fall, and there can be no more obligation. I loved the differentiation our speaker had about you can wear a button, and that's where you're comfortable having your advocacy. You can be out marching, and that's where you're comfortable. But I think we all agree that the minimum at this point for all of our advocacy and all of our activism has to be voting. And ideally, bringing as many people with you to vote as possible.
So my political activism began in the 80s, going door to door for Ronald Reagan with my mother. But she taught me that, when you care about something, you stand up for it and you go do it. So we would go door to door and hang these little door hangers, and I thought it was kind of fun. One thing that stands out, though, is at the same time as my mom being a really proud, strong conservative, she used to wear a gold necklace that said ERA on it. And I used to ask her, what is that again? She goes, oh, it's really important. We have to get this thing passed. It's like, okay. And I haven't asked her about that in a long time. And I do need to ask her about that. But it stuck with me. And so it wasn't until college that I started developing my own ideas, much to the dismay of my parents at the time. And I started realizing that I was going down a different path. I decided to get involved with the Obama campaign in 2012 because I happened to live in Chicago, and it was very easy and exciting to do that. And I had some time. We had moved there with my young kids, and I was uprooted and said, okay, what am I going to do here? But before that, we watched the election results in 2008 when Obama was elected, and my 3 kids, who were like 7, 10, and 11 at the time, were really excited about it and saying, he's becoming president tonight. Can we go there and see that? And I said, well, you can't go there tonight, and he's not really becoming president tonight. That's happening in January. And they said, we should go do that. And so we flew from LA and went and checked that out. And they were so excited, I decided I should get involved. So since then, it's just taken off, and I've become more involved with local elections and things like that because I care. And once you start doing it, you realize how good it feels, and maybe you take a little bit of credit for it.
Three sisters went to play.